Who doesn't love magic? And with witches having been a set character type in multiple forms of entertainment for hundreds of years, they are by far one of the most popular types of magic users out there. And cartoons are no exception to this, with having a wide range of witches throughout the years, from spellcasters who use their magic to save the world to witches who use dark magic or worse. Today we're going to be looking at various cartoon witches and ranking these characters based on their actions. I'm Kifinosi with Wicked Binge, and this is Cartoon Witches, Good to Evil. As usual, we'll be starting with the most heroic characters and working our way down. These witches are great at magic, but they freely use their magic to help others out and more. These characters are the good. For our gold medal of good, we're giving it to Sally Thorne McKnight from Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Sure, at first Thorne is someone that Scooby and the gang initially suspect is behind the crimes that are being committed during the movie, but after the fake Witch's Ghost is revealed to be none other than Thorne's father, she joins the others in trying to recover Sarah Ravencroft's diary to clear her name. Unfortunately, the diary is revealed to be a spell book that releases Sarah after it's found, and while it seems like Sarah might be free to cause widespread damage, Thorne is the one who's able to send her back to her imprisoned state thanks to her being a descendant of Wiccans, even though Thorne doesn't use her inherited magic otherwise. Seeing that she's able to stop a major threat, plus how she has a deep friendship with her bandmates, as well as Scooby and the others, Thorne is the clear winner for this award. Our youngest entrant, as well as possibly one of the strongest on our list, Juniper Lee from The Life and Times of Juniper Lee, is getting the silver medal of good. Unlike a majority of entries on this list, Juniper Lee tends to rely on charms and amulets to assist her with her job rather than spells. And her job is no small task, as she is the Tejonze. Juniper is the person who stands as the protector of humanity from the supernatural world's threats. And yeah, Juniper tends to use her fists and fighting skills more than her magical powers. Whenever she does use her magic, it's more often than not used as a way to protect others or stop a major threat. Really, Juniper only doesn't get the gold here due to her occasional attitude towards her brothers and being the Tejonze. But like we said, Juniper is still a kid, and if we're honest with ourselves, everyone who has siblings has butted heads with them now and again, and being the guardian of humanity would be a tough pill to swallow at times, and we can't blame Juniper for her attitude from time to time, and all the good deeds she does more than make up for it. The Bronze Medal of Good is being awarded to the head sorceress of Kingdom Mystacor, Castaspella, from She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. As she is the ruler of Mystacor, to say that Castaspella has a lot of responsibility is an understatement. Unlike other rulers of other realms, however, Castaspella does not let her power go to her head and is a pretty decent ruler, as well as a friend and aunt to Queen Glimmer.
Is that my Glimmer?
Like the previous entries, Castaspella often uses her magic to protect others, such as using her spells on the refugees after the war occurs between the rebellion and the Horde, which hides them from enemy forces. For all the good that Castaspella does, however, she does get knocked down a little bit for being a bit overbearing and smothering on some occasions. This is done out of concern and love, however, and while we do think that Castaspella should tone it down from time to time, seeing that her heart is in the right place, we can't fault her too much. Coming up next is Sabrina Spellman from Sabrina the Animated Series. Much like her Archie comics and live-action counterparts, Sabrina is a witch who is pretty inexperienced when it comes to using her magic. However, unlike her other two versions, this Sabrina is more willing to use her magic for minor things, such as trying to make herself more popular or getting her new clothes, and while her magic almost always backfires on her, Sabrina does walk away from whatever happened with a greater understanding of magic and how to use it properly. Outside of using her magic, Sabrina is shown to deeply care for her aunts Hilda and Zelda, as well as her friends Harvey and Chloe. We are cutting Sabrina some slack as well, since even though most of her attempts to properly use magic end in failure, she is still a kid and, more importantly, learns from her mistakes. But as she should put more thoughts into her actions before using her powers, she lands here. The first of our more traditional witches is rounding out the good category. Witch Hazel from the Donald Duck short Trick or Treat. Obviously taking place during Halloween, Witch Hazel helps Huey, Louie, and Dewey in getting candy from their Uncle Donald. And while this is a pretty nice thing to do, Witch Hazel is also pretty harsh with her approach. True, she is pretty nice toward Donald at first, but after he pulls on her nose and pours water on her, Witch Hazel casts a spell on him, causing him to lose control of his feet. This causes Donald to be struck by a cactus and burned by fire, before Witch Hazel also has him run miles, also knocking down his pantry door to allow his nephews to get their treats. And yes, all of that is pretty unnecessary and going way beyond reasonable retaliation, but as Witch Hazel is not doing this just to cause harm, but to also help others, and seems to be a fairly good person otherwise, she just barely evades the gray area. Speaking of which, that was our last good character. Now we're going to be descending into neutral territory. This is the gray area. Mentor figure and powerful sorceress Ida Clawthorn from the Owl House is our first gray area entrant. She might have really impressive magical skills and is willing to teach loose, but Ida definitely has some questionable things about her. When it comes to her teaching methods, Ida has been described as not only throwing someone into the deep end, but also setting the entire body of water on fire. And while that is a very extreme approach to teaching, Ida does care for Luce and is willing to help her out. Apart from Luce, Ida does butt heads with her sister Lilith quite a bit due to their conflicting personalities, with Ida being way more anti-authoritarian, which also lands her in quite a bit of trouble with others as well.
Next time, I won't be alone.
Despite her strained relationship with her sister and her other family members, partly to do with her curse, Ida does care for those close to her. Ida does have her flaws, and some of her actions do cause a lot of trouble for others, no doubt, and we do think that Ida could be a better mentor for Luce, but seeing how she cares for others and that her heart is normally in the right place, that at least lands her at the top of the gray area. Probably the most tragic character on this list is up next, Aggie Prendergast from Paranorman. Much like with the real-life Salem witch trials that took place in the late 1600s, Aggie was an innocent young girl who was falsely accused and sentenced to death due to her ability to speak to the dead, an ability she shares with the main protagonist of the movie, Norman. And while she might have not been a witch when she was alive, unfortunately after she's killed, Aggie does get some magical powers, releasing a curse on the citizens of Blythe Hollow. As a result of the curse, multiple people return as zombies in the present day, with the curse being in place until Norman's able to confront Aggie. And while it does take a considerable bit from Norman, he's able to talk Aggie down from her rage and is able to connect with her due to knowing how she felt, ending the curse. Like we said, Aggie is an absolutely tragic character and did not deserve the fate she got. And while she was able to let go of her anger and end the curse, redeeming herself before departing for the afterlife, we also have to acknowledge what brings her down this much. Mainly that if Norman had not stepped in to help Aggie out, her anger most likely would have caused the curse to last indefinitely. And to finish up the gray area, we have the Witch from Brave. What brings the Witch down this low in our ranking aren't her actions with others. Really, judging by her interactions with Merida, the Witch seems like a pretty friendly, if a bit eccentric, old woman. What really counts against the Witch, however, is how she's willing to hand out powerful spells to those she's fairly certain will misuse them. Especially Mordu, the main villain of the movie.
Another witch!
And while we aren't blaming the Witch entirely for the results, giving out spells that transform their targets into bears, and then being pretty cryptic about how to undo the magic, definitely raises some eyebrows, but as she does help Merida in reversing the spell, even if it does take her a bit of time to discover what the Witch's words meant, is what keeps the Witch from being the first entrant in our next category. We finally arrive at the witches who are not only powerful users of magic, but at best use their powers for their own evil purposes, or at worst, actually committing murder. These characters are the bad to evil. For our top spot in this category, we're giving it to the Hand Witch from the Gravity Falls episode Little Gift Shop of Horrors. First encountered at the Gravity Falls swap meet, the Hand Witch is not shy about using her powers on Grunkle Stan after he steals a watch from her stand. And while stealing stuff is obviously a bad habit to have, the Hand Witch's response is pretty extreme as she casts a curse that makes Grunkle Stan lose his hands. You might be thinking she did this just as revenge on Grunkle Stan trying to rip her off. And while that is true, the Hand Witch's end goal is even stranger, that being that she wants a date from Grunkle Stan. This is necessary to reverse the spell and return his hands.
So hard to meet people these days!
And he does refuse at first, but after he, Mabel, and Dipper visit the Hand Witch again in her cave, they give her home a makeover to help her attract other potential dates, and the Hand Witch finally returns Grunkle Stan's hands out of appreciation. We can sympathize with the Hand Witch for wanting a date, but when you steal someone's hands in order to get them to go out with you, yeah, you deserve a ranking in this category. Taking the term big-headed to an entirely new meaning is a good way to describe our next entrant, Yubaba from Spirited Away. Probably the most oppressive character on this list, Yubaba is the proprietor of the bathhouse, and to say that she isn't a great boss would be a major understatement. Rather than treating those who work for her fairly, Yubaba has her magic power to steal their names and force them to work for her forever unless they recover their identities. And when it comes to how she treats her employees, Yubaba gives them very basic living conditions, usually with a single room to live in, and Yubaba using her wealth to give herself a much more extravagant lifestyle. When it comes to her interactions with Chihiro Ogino, Yubaba treats her even harsher than her other employees, often calling her stupid or shoving Chihiro in front of No-Face after it enters the bathhouse. However, for all the harm she does, Yubaba does have some very small examples of kindness, such as caring deeply for her son Bo and congratulating Chihiro after she helps the river spirit. Unfortunately for Yubaba, though, these instances are not enough to land her a higher spot in this category. Mirror, mirror on the wall, show us the vainest entrant of them all. Yes, it's time for Queen Grimhilde, aka the Evil Queen from Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. To be able to love oneself is a really valuable quality to have, for sure. But the Evil Queen takes this quality to the most extreme level of toxicity as possible. After discovering that Snow White was considered the fairest in the land, she immediately tries to have her killed. After learning that the huntsman let her escape, however, the Evil Queen uses her magic to transform herself into an old hag before making her way to the Seven Dwarves' home to find Snow White. Luckily for the Evil Queen, Snow White must have missed out on the whole "don't take candy from strangers" talk, as she's able to put Snow White into a practically irreversible sleep after she takes a bite from a poison apple. The Evil Queen isn't really able to enjoy her victory, though, as she's chased down by the dwarves and then struck by lightning and crushed by a boulder. While murder is murder, the Evil Queen is mainly focusing on Snow White and is not attempting to kill loads of others, unlike our next couple of entries. Speaking of which, get it? We have a three-way tie for the Bronze Medal of Evil. Marge Simpson, along with Patty and Selma Bouvier from the segment Easy Bake Coven from the 8th Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Much like Aggie Prendergast, Marge Simpson and her sisters Patty and Selma find themselves being accused of being witches during the late 1600s, but that's where the similarities end. After being discovered to actually be witches, Patty, Selma, and Marge take revenge on Old Springfield due to the harsh methods used to find out if they were witches or not. Specifically, they decide to act on the notion to eat the town's children, after overhearing Maud and Ned talking about what they feared the witches would do. When the trio arrives later on at the Flanders house to kidnap Rod and Todd, to eat later of course, Marge, Patty, and Selma are convinced to take candy instead. And while this does start the tradition of trick-or-treating, Marge reveals that they had actually eaten some of the town's children prior to being convinced to just trick-or-treat instead. So yeah, cannibalism and murder, is it any wonder why these three are ranked so low? From those who eat kids to someone who uses them to extend her own life, the Beldam, aka the Other Mother, from Coraline is the winner of the Silver Medal of Evil. Proof that one should never judge a book by its cover. The Other Mother first encounters Coraline after she finds her way into the other world, and at first, the Other Mother is seemingly the kind of parent any kid would love to have. Attentive, caring, and helpful, the Other Mother does anything she can to try to make her world as appealing as possible to Coraline. And while this does interest Coraline to return back to the other world many times, she soon discovers the Other Mother's true nature. More specifically, Other Mother wants to sew buttons over her victims' eyes in order to absorb their life force to extend her own. Coraline is able to escape the Other Mother after she finds and returns the eyes of the Other Mother's previous victims, and they help her out by getting her out of the other world once and for all. Other Mother isn't completely out of the game yet, though, as one of her arms was severed after the door between the two worlds closed on it. Thankfully, Coraline is able to find and destroy it, trapping Other Mother in her own world forever. Seemingly perpetual life is cool and everything, but the Other Mother is a truly evil witch in every sense of the word, and more than deserves her silver medal here. What's worse than mass murder? How about trying to destroy everything? Which is the goal for our Gold Medal of Evil winner, Hagar, from Voltron Legendary Defenders. Once a kind and caring scientist of Honerva, Hagar has fallen a very long way from her previous life. Cold, deeply uncaring for anyone or anything, Hagar looks to not only drain entire planets of life force, but to destroy all of existence itself. When it comes to others, Hagar deeply enjoys the torment and harm that she's caused them, such as causing Shiro's rage and fear to overwhelm him and using her powers for unethical experimentation. Oh, and if one of her many experiments fails, no surprise here that Hagar simply discards them before moving on to the next one. Hagar is finally able to have her eyes opened to what she was doing by the Paladins of Allura before passing into the afterlife, but not before she nearly destroys the entire universe. Hagar does have a tragic past, and we do see where she's coming from with some of her actions, but this in no way redeems her. And that's it for our morality spectrum. Before we end, though, we're going to hand out some Sinner Awards. Our Pride Award is going to the Evil Queen, as she's unable to have anyone else other than her be considered the fairest in the land. And while we're at it, we're also going to give her the Envy Award due to her jealousy of Snow White. For our Darwin Award, we're giving it to the Witch from Brave. She isn't that dumb, per se, but giving out powerful spells freely when it's pretty obvious that it would be misused probably wouldn't have happened if more thought was put into that decision. The Gluttony Award goes to Marge, Patty, and Selma, as they not only want to eat kids, they do eat them prior to being given candy. As her anger and desire for revenge are the driving forces for her actions, we think that Aggie Prendergast is a pretty clear winner for our Wrath Award. For our Lust Award, we're giving it to the Hand Witch. Wanting a significant other is an understandable thing, but stealing someone's hands to get that goal is a very extreme way to get someone's attention. And finally, the Greed Award is going to Yubaba. If you prioritize gold and wealth, and are extremely frugal when it comes to your own workers by giving them tiny living conditions and yourself a glamorous office, yeah, Yubaba is definitely the obvious choice for this award. But what do you think? Do you agree? Did we miss any other cartoon witches? Let us know in the comments if you agree with our ranking, and tell us which series you'd like to see covered next. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on new episodes of Good to Evil, featuring your favorite animations, cartoons, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.